county meeting first?
Yeah, county commissioners,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Human Rights Commission, July 2nd meeting.
July
12th, thank you. Let's say 12. Right off to a good start. Let's begin with a roll call for the minutes.
Luan Shalabi.
Corinne Moore. Vivian Chang.
Sumi Kailasapati,
And you are Council
City Council member.
Leslie Stambaugh.
Dwight Wilson.
Rick Ratliff.
David Baum.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Changes or to or approval of the agenda. And approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes other than me? I want to add contractor compliance after LGBT liaisons and HRC website.
Contractor Compliance.
Okay? Anything else? Any questions, comments, vote? Somebody want to?
I move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Changes to and approval of the June minutes. It says May, but it is June. Do we have thoughts on that? I had some changes, but I
I didn't notice any.
So,
Okay.
I guess the only change I'd make is on D.
Yeah.
It says he will draft a letter to send to these, it says commissions, and I think that should be organizations.
No.
Yeah. To each, wait. I'm sorry, where, now I'm.
It's the last sentence. It says he will draft a letter to send to these
I see, yes, you're right.
organizations.
I didn't even catch that. Good. Okay. I had problems with it, this one too. Is that the only one you found in that?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to add the phrase that Linda Winkler used, because it's not just organizations. Organizations that are on the front line of human rights issues, especially pressing now. How do you like that? Or is that too confining?
Pressing now,
Or
I think it just,
on the front line of human rights issues?
yeah, that sounds fine.
But I was aware that we didn't want all our organizations to think that
Sure.
you just randomly. And then I added, and bring it to the next meeting for input
Okay.
at the end.
Yeah.
There's nothing under police review project, next steps. And I think that there was a strong statement in favor of going deeper into the community for input. And I think that has to be in there. I don't know how to say it, but.
Yeah, we had clarity on that.
But there's nothing on here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We have the sketchiest minutes of any place I know.
Do we really?
Mhm.
Because this is what they told, remember, we used to have the most exacting. I mean, I really, it would help me because I could read them beforehand and know what we said. and
I think it's very important, right? I mean, otherwise, how do the residents of the city know about what's actually being discussed, or even if it's a quick?
Well, without watching the whole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
no,
which
I-
they're not going to be watching the whole 2 hours, right?
But you know, if you're right, I have been told, I mean, I really fought with the powers that be a lot. And they finally convinced me that they just want standardized minutes that don't say anything, and I've had problems with it, but that's what they said. No one has time to read it? I don't know.
No, I think we should do it. I think they made it really oversimplified because there's some commissions and committees were not submitting timely because they felt it was a big burden, right? So they said, you know what, just say who was present, who was absent, what, in order to get it out of them because people were just not submitting. There was 1 year delaying some commissions.
Okay.
But I think we should just, they're not going to delete it, we should just submit it.
Okay.
It sometimes feels like it's a lack of transparency.
Yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
think, and I
That's what-
really
that's
would
what
like
bothers
people
me.
to know about what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's come up with a statement. Or, I think that people should at least know that we have actively,
Thought about this issue, right?
yes.
Who are the people to speak with in the city administration about this issue?
The issue about what is.
About the content of the minutes, of meeting minutes?
I suppose Nancy Niemela, this is the city clerk has standardized minutes. And I guess what I should do is read what they actually say as opposed to hearing what human resources says that they say. And that's what the person who does our minutes is from human resources, and she does a lot of other minutes. So she seemed like that's the way to go. But maybe it's not, and I don't know, I really have fought a lot over the years.
It's kind of ironic because in the current year budget, we added for one FTE to do exactly this, because this is a critique that came out, that there isn't transparency, there isn't enough, we have all these residents who are spending hours and hours in boards and commission and doing very valuable work, example this, and yet nobody knows about it, because if it's not publicized, how do you know? We could just talk in this room for 2 hours, and we hire, there is allocation funding for hiring of one new FTE for the city to be the liaison to do exactly this. So,
Okay.
so
Well, I will go to human resources and say that we had a discussion and.
why don't we just add it and send it to them? Are they going to delete it? Are they going to? No.
No, we can certainly add this phrase.
Yeah.
But for me to ask Heather to do something that's quite a bit more extensive in general, and that's what the issue is.
Okay.
But we certainly can add this one thing. We just have to write it, and I don't know, somebody in their spare time will write it, and then we'll try to pass it before the meeting is over. Is that possible?
You're talking,
Or,
Do you think that's what I'm sorry, Dwight, go ahead.
no, I was simply gonna say, you had suggested a 1 or 2 sentences.
I did, but no one wrote it down. I could actually look on the video and we can get pretty much that, if we could approve that if you liked what I said.
Yeah.
Which was something like,
All the different commissions and city
we,
council too. This is 2016, so, and most of them don't have minutes, period.
we pushed Hillard Hines to go deeper into the community to get more input from
This is kind of specific.
at-risk peoples,
Hazard.
or people who are,
District.
Marginalized was the word we were using, wasn't it?
I don't know. They're people
It
who have the
works.
most trouble with the police.
Yeah.
The marginalized works very well.
Okay,
Yeah, we need to definitely.
okay. Do you have a start?
If there's anybody who hates doing minutes, I'll raise my hand. But yeah, I have to start.
Okay.
Discuss the need to go deeper into the community to speak with marginalized people.
Historic.
And
District has pretty extensive routes.
and strongly urged her to
And-
pursue.
Historic district commission.
And, yep, and
That.
strongly urged,
Yeah.
Hillard Hines, Deborah Kirby from Hillard Hines, too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just going through minutes of different commissions in 2016, and it seems like most of them are pretty brief, except for the Historic District Commission that has extensive notes.
We
They
should,
have
my
extensive-
humble request to you
Minutes.
is
Uh-huh.
how, go as extensive as you need to.
Like in the Historic District Commission, it notes who moved for something, who seconded it,
Wow.
and
Mhm.
also all the specific details. They're very extensive. Like for
Well, I'll tell you what I think it would take. It would take,
nothing else.
as long as Heather is doing it, it probably would take us looking at them more critically than we've looked at them before and thinking about where they should be elaborated on. Because she's not part of the commission and doesn't really, you know,
I'm easy with that. I don't want to be seen as trying to mask what we were doing
right.
or non-responsive to the community. That didn't serve any
Yeah.
purpose.
But I do want, I think that was really an important part of our meeting last time, and
It's
I
crucial.
didn't like that it wasn't on here.
I'm trying to get my mind around why the clerk would sort of streamline them like this. Is it because everything is recorded and the feeling is, look, if you have basic minutes, that's good enough for community members because they can go watch the, I'm asking-
I have heard that argument,
If
I
that's
have to admit.
If
and-
that's the case, why is the Historic District Commission, like, they had like 10+ pages of agenda?
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
They
guessing
really-
that somebody on their commission
Yes.
takes those minutes instead of.
Well, we used to have,
Yeah.
you know,
I bet.
Answering to history.
quite a bit.
I
Yeah,
bet.
and they're historians.
Yeah,
right.
I bet.
No, people have said that to me, but you know, I have trouble, it takes two hours to go through that.
Yes.
I mean, it's a long time.
Do you see that?
It's
Yeah.
not,
That's why.
I mean, it
You're
took
right.
2 hours to do it, it's 2 hours
Because
to,
I always have our staff name, right?
people are not gonna go through every
So-
commission meeting
Okay, I thought our staff.
video.
No, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
And so what is the suggestion that the city provide more resources to do a more extensive job? Or is the expectation that we will
Yeah, so there's
ourselves
nothing here
do a
about
more
staff.
extensive job?
Unfortunately, I think we are the only people who can,
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
given.
Very
I
sure.
used to write the minutes
Yeah.
myself,
Oh, you
they
did?
were very
10
extensive.
pages.
It's only been recently that we've had staff, and that
Yeah.
is a very nice thing to have.
Yes,
But there are some drawbacks.
yeah.
And as public records, I don't think it's out of the ordinary that she chooses the main points without any details.
Exactly.
However, it is up to us if we read and we need to put more information, we
Especially
just
this. Mhm.
send it back and they add it. I mean, I'm saying this because I do supervise about 11 boards and we have the minutes, and we always say it's better to be brief because these are public records.
Yes.
And
yeah,
if,
public-
if the board needs to put something else, I mean, we can always send it back and add it to it. So that might be a solution, just to read it, and if we need to add something, we can add it.
Well, let's try it and see how it works. But we take responsibility, because you're right, they are public records, and so you don't want them too chatty because they're, I don't know. On the other hand, I really want people to understand that we're spending time talking about important issues and what they are and what are.
And so what will we be doing? Will we be basically taking time at our meetings to fill in the minutes that Heather provides, you know, at the next meeting? Or, I mean, by that time, the meeting is over and it's a month later, right? What is it that you are suggesting that we do? I just want to be clear about it so that we know.
I think that's one part, and I think the second part is to tell Heather that we'd like more detail.
Okay,
So maybe the two together would be
Okay.
helpful. I'm not sure how to do it, but. Did you have a statement that you think should be in those minutes? Because I would like to be able to approve these minutes.
The HRC discussed the need to go deeper into the community in speaking with marginalized people. And then you had added another piece to that.
That we urged.
And that we urged Deborah Kirby to do that,
Yeah,
and her team.
yeah, yeah. With that change, can we vote on this?
So moved. I move to adopt the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I will talk to Heather as well and get your wording on that so I can pass it on to her. Okay. Communication. Let's start with communications for this meeting. Vivian?
Facebook and Twitter were both updated.
Yep, I got your Twitter message, it's lovely. And are you getting any feedback at all, or do you have any idea how many people are reading that?
I mean, I can't track how many people are reading it, but people do occasionally like it or reblog or retweet or reshare it, so.
It's okay, so something's working. Let's go on to communication and promotion. We have flyers, and we have a distribution. Vivian did a great thing in, what's his name? Oh, I guess it is it. In putting on Dropbox, where we can all,
Google Drive.
Google Drive, where we can all go and look at it, who posted what where. And we can see that not very much has been posted, but we can also see that some things have. And the things that have been posted are crossed off, right? That's
Yes,
the
it
way
should
it
be.
looks.
Whenever you make an entry on the sheet, it fills it in and then it does strike through. It's sort of
Okay.
interesting, but
Yeah.
you can still read it.
Uh-huh.
I added to it just last night and this morning, coincidentally.
Thank you.
Well, it's about time.
Well, no,
I got out there and.
but
and if
people
you went
didn't
so-
have these nice color flyers,
Right.
and now they do.
Yeah, and I was using black and white, but Vivian's Google sheet works really well.
Good. That's good. I thought so too. Thank you, thank you. People can take up to 3. I made 30 copies, and we can keep making them. I didn't want to have more than we needed, but I didn't want to have less either. Somebody mentioned, in some places that you do need to get permission to do it, and where you need permission, maybe it's worth getting a signature. I think, it seems like somebody wrote that in an email.
What do you mean getting a signature, getting a?
The library, for example, is a place where you need permission.
Mhm.
And then, and I know that I put some in the library, and I'm not sure that somebody didn't take it down afterwards, thinking I might not have had permission when I really did have permission. So for having somebody sign it might be a good idea. If it's a poster, I actually left.
You mean someone from the
Leaflet.
commission signed the poster, or
No,
someone from the
someone
library?
from the
Yeah,
library.
I assumed that they, what I did last night, I went back to the library because I noticed that it had been a couple months since someone
Uh-huh.
had been in the library. And what I was told was that they would run it through their administration and they would post one at the main branch and one at Mallet's Creek, which apparently are the only two places where they post things.
Oh.
And I've got to believe that if they're going to approve them, there must be, I'm assuming that they must have some
Stamp or
demarcation that they
Yeah.
put on
Yes.
it in order
Okay.
to,
Yeah.
discern that
That's
it's
right.
approved, so.
That's right. Okay.
Well, as a general policy, should we ask permission before we post these things anywhere?
Well, I think different places are,
Depends on the.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like at a grocery store and a general public board, I don't think
Right.
you
Yeah,
need to
of
do it.
course. Yeah, but at a church or a
Sure.
safe house or something.
Sure, so all of I went last night to I went to the YMCA, I went to the Family Learning Institute, and I went to the library. First I went to Mallet's Creek, not realizing I had to go to the main branch. And actually had a nice conversation with each of them. And today I went to the University of Michigan's Spectrum Center. And
Okay.
in each case, I had a nice chat with, a representative of each place, explained to them who I was, what I was doing, what we were trying to do. And they were supportive. They said, they all said, we don't think this will be a problem. We will get it approved. In fact, the Spectrum Center, I spoke to the director and he says, we'll hang this up today. kind of
Right.
thing, But,
But you know, the fact that you've done that means that they know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yes.
You've already
So just
introduced
putting it out
yourself,
there.
and it's just nicer if
Yes.
you can do that.
Yep.
Thanks for asking that question. Okay, so we're starting to go public, in a more public way. Vivian and Corinne, do you know any more about the liaisons, the LGBT liaisons?
I don't. I don't have any news, and some of it is because I have just.
You've been
not
kind of busy, and
available.
congratulations, by
Yeah.
the way.
Thanks.
You've
So
become.
right, so it's not as if I aggressively followed up by it. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
haven't aggressively followed
Okay.
up, but I can definitely do that.
I keep it on here
Yeah.
because
And I'm not sure at this point whether we should just try to schedule a meeting with the mayor and the liaisons, kind of get everybody in one room.
That's a
at
good
this point,
idea.
because I do feel like somebody should have gotten back to me, you know, in particular Brad. So.
Yeah, let's make sure Brad hasn't talked.
Right,
But we
right,
could-
well,
And we could actually send that, pass that by the mayor first and let him know what
Right.
we're doing.
yeah, yeah. I don't
I can
think there's
do
a
that.
problem with that. I'm not trying to be pushy, but I think that there's no reason not to just say, hey, let's get in a room. and
Right,
let's get
I
on the
agree.
same page at this
I
point.
agree. But I'd like to see something done.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a request from somebody in a different community who wants to know what we're doing with LGBT, so I'm thinking, well, let's make sure we've got ours down before we become a model for everybody else.
Right,
So
right.
that is coming. We've got a lot of just
so
little.
shall we invite them to the next meeting,
Oh,
the liaisons?
I think that's part of the problem is Brad is part-time in Texas, but more.
Oh,
Right,
Is that
more
part of the
accurately,
problem?
full-time in Texas, and he's here twice a month, but it will probably be difficult for him to make a Wednesday night meeting.
I see.
But I can certainly say at this point, we'd like for you to, come to a meeting, or at least like get a meeting with a few of us and the mayor and the
Right.
liaisons.
right.
That, if that works better for them, but yeah, also get them in this room.
And is Dawn in our, I mean, Dawn is.
Dawn
Dawn
isn't
is,
in
yes,
it.
Dawn
She's
is,
in
I
it.
think, reached out and people have met with her.
Yeah.
So I won't say she's non-responsive, but I do think,
And
I don't
I don't
know
know
how
that
much
Dawn
work
even
Brad has done
knows.
with the mayor, and he
Right.
was sort of the one who was going to say, I'll take this to the mayor and get back to you. And he hasn't gotten back to me, as far as whether there's been any response from the mayor or progress. Or
We don't even know if anybody's talked to Dawn about
Right,
Yeah.
right, or whether he even knows that Dawn is now,
Right.
liaison to the police department, and so, right, and at this point, he knows whether or not he can work the Texas Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
deal, and, originally
He
he
might want to
wasn't sure.
delegate some of this
And
too.
now, it may be more clear to him that this
Right.
may require, more work
Yeah.
than he can pull
Okay.
off, so.
I'm gonna keep it on the agenda, so
I hear
let's
you.
get it
Okay.
next time. HRC website. Again, lots of administrative odds and ends. This is something that Linda has done a great deal of work just getting, it's hard to keep it updated. And she's gotten Linda Wandrush has been very responsive, but we finally got all the pieces that we wanted on, at least the most recent things we've done, so that anybody goes to our website at least knows where we are and how they can get information about Hillard Hines, for example, and about the survey and about the resolutions we've put through. We heard something the last time that I don't think I'd heard before, and that was that I kept hearing reasons why we couldn't put things on the website and make this a real, like a destination website. If you have a question about human rights, this is where you come. And which was odd because Robin Wilkerson and I from Human Resources talked about this a long time ago. She said it was a great idea. I thought it was a great idea. We were going to do it. And every time I tried to do it, I realized we couldn't put links up. We couldn't do I heard no. And no one wants to spend that kind of time on your website anyway. I'm now hearing, I heard from Nancy that we could put references to, not links, but references to other websites. I haven't figured this out, but I do know that there is more of a possibility, and I would like you to start thinking about what we could put on the website that would be useful for other people. So that this would be, if they have a question about, what are the questions, legal questions to ask if I'm hiring? What are my rights as a person? I don't know, what are our rights? We've got the Human Rights Ordinance. But what does discrimination mean? We could put some information, or certainly about our,
Why can't we post links? What was the reasoning behind that?
the links.
Yeah.
You're gonna, it didn't make sense. At first they said only government links, and then it was only some government links, and then it got to a point where I wasn't sure what was gonna be okay or what wasn't, because we was thinking EEOC information, there's lots of that.
But that's not okay?
It's definitely not okay.
really?
Doesn't sound like,
It sounds like the direct link is not okay, but you can refer
Refer
to
it.
the-
You could
She
ref-
said you can do a resource list, but you cannot do
a
direct
resource
links.
list, right.
And maybe it could be that they don't like keeping the links up to date and that's presented too much of a hardship with like dead links, and they just don't want their staff wasting time. It's really weird, I agree, but if you provide just a list and not a direct link to websites, that's
well,
one
but
thing you
it's
don't
not
have
as
to worry
useful.
about. Right.
And one of the things that I know that Grand Rapids did at one point, and I assume it's still there, they had a Facebook, they had Facebook
Mhm.
where so they could write about all kinds of things, how to do,
Right.
and which would really be nice. But there are liability issues.
Yeah,
And that's what
that's
the
what
city is
That's what
worried
I'm guessing
about.
this is about.
I'm thinking.
But like,
But links and
what if we
totally-
link to like
Links should be
EEOC?
totally-
Like, that's not a liability issue.
Right.
We link to a government website, right?
One would think not.
Right. But maybe they don't wanna
Yeah, so-
maintain it. I mean,
Well,
they do
but
change with every
they don't-
administration, the information
They
on
should.
every federal website changes
Yeah.
every time the administration changes, so it's not.
I mean, it could be
Standard.
our burden to keep those, to
Right,
remind them.
what if we agree to keep them up? Nancy said no, which is, I don't understand why, because people are gonna be like, why are none of these, like, you listed resources and I can't click on them and
Yeah.
go
Right,
directly to
it's
the
so-
website.
In this
It's
day and
really
age, it would just be
awkward.
strange.
I
Yes,
think
I think
that's
that
true.
it would be really helpful to, for example, link to the University of Michigan
Right. it's
equivalent
really-
of us.
Spectrum
because-
Center, right, or something.
Yeah, or the
Right.
University of Michigan has like a board or panel or something, right, that does similar work.
You
to
mean the
this?
Office for Institutional Equity or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, or like,
Right, if, are you a University
if
of
something
Michigan student,
happens
this
on
may-
campus, we could say like, this happened on campus, go to them instead.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Mhm.
Is there a protocol, I mean, for getting your content approved by someone, on the website? I mean, somebody, it sounds like, is regulating this. And, I mean, is there just a simple, like, so we have a bunch of stuff on there now, how does that get approved to be put up? Does this person named Robin just put it up, or this person named Linda just put it up?
Lisa.
Lisa?
Yes, Lisa puts it up, but I think there are things that Lisa has said no to, and I don't know what they are. But these are our the things that are on here now are basically our resolutions, our ordinance, the contract with Hillard Heights. I mean, they're all things that are public information elsewhere, and these are mostly Legistar links to Ann Arbor. They like those.
Yeah.
But it is not as useful for the person who just wants to know, I've got a human resources, or a human rights question.
Who can provide us with clarity? Would that be this?
Nancy
Would it be
Niemola.
Lisa?
Maybe Nancy Niemola, that's the person who's
The lawyer.
given me the clarity such as I have, which is not very good.
Well, if you would like, I'd be happy to talk to Nancy and ask her, and say that we're interested in creating a resource list that would be useful for people for members of the
That would be
community.
very helpful.
And what are the parameters here? And I guess let's list a few examples that I can go to her with. One would be, so you were saying the state EEOC website,
Federal.
or federal or state?
Both.
Or both? Okay. Why not?
The website for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights,
Okay.
Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crimes,
ACLU.
ACLU, Fair Housing,
You said, what was the hate crimes organization?
Michigan, it's MIAC, Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crimes,
Okay.
MIAACH.
Alliance Against Hate Crimes, okay.
Um,
I mean, so
Fair
that's probably
Housing,
enough by
yeah.
way of
Okay,
example.
yeah.
But
But
I
those are-
will go and I will contact Nancy,
Mhm.
and I will say that this is our desire. We'd like to create a resource list on our website, maybe a link to a separate part where we would list resources.
Mhm.
And this is what we have in mind. How do we get approval to do that?
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
start there.
That's a good idea.
Uh,
And what is, ask her what the approval process is. I would,
Okay.
I can't wait to hear what it is. No, because that would really be useful to people, I think. I'm not positive, but I think people would start coming if there were something to come for. And people did look, by the way, for things like the survey. I think Linda's somebody asked, why isn't the Hillard Hines survey on your website? And I think it wasn't.
Is it because we can't put a link?
Well, we did put a link. They had originally had a link. I think it had to do with independence, the idea that,
Or they didn't want their link to be in somebody else's website?
I
Oh,
think, I
see.
think
Okay.
so, originally.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. Well, that'd give us a nice start. I think, considering that we're bringing people to our website, I want to have something on our website that's worth going to.
Okay.
Contractor Compliance. Pam.
Well, this is a partial,
This isn't the ban the box stuff.
right,
Yeah.
right. So at our last meeting, we discussed contacting the contractors who do business, who are in Ann Arbor, and verifying if they have in their application the question of, have you been convicted of, and whatever that may be. Some say misdemeanor, some say felony, some just say, have you been convicted? Some say in the last 7 years.
You're doing ban the box.
Well, that was part of the whole process.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
put that, we can talk about it now, but it's further up on the.
Well, I can wait. I'm not, so that was how that discussion
Right.
came about. In essence, because we received a complaint, I should say we received an inquiry because it hadn't been reduced to a complaint, from an individual who asked if all of Ann Arbor businesses were mandated to be compliant with our ordinance, which says all those who do business with the city, all city employees or city personnel, like the city of Ann Arbor, will not ask, have you been or sustained a conviction? But the inquiry was from the person who asked if that did not apply to all of the city of Ann Arbor, public, private, businesses. And out of that discussion, Linda and I agreed to formulate some questions of those. We thought we would start with those who do business with the city, the contractors who do business with the city. And Nancy suggested that we might perhaps access those individuals or organizations via the internet to see if they had an application that was published that we could look at. So I started that process. Linda, as you know, is not here, and so we haven't had an opportunity to get together. But in viewing just those contractors who do business with the city of Ann Arbor. Some of them, if they do not have open positions, don't allow you to access their website and just submit a blanket application. So some of them are volunteer positions, and so they don't have an application that you can complete. What I saw briefly is that sometimes if you want to express interest as a volunteer, they ask you to email a contact person for that company, and then there's an individual who will receive that information and follow up in some way. So I personally pulled a couple, and in speaking with Leslie earlier today, one of the contractors who does business with the city of Ann Arbor asks an illegal question. So I brought tonight for all of us, it's a copy of what you can ask and what you can't ask, but it's actually published by Wake Forest University. However, I will get us a copy from EEO because this is a duplicate of what EEO says is lawful and or is not. So in this one contractor, they ask what year you graduated from high school. That is unlawful because you can determine or guess their age. Yeah. So what you have is a brief listing of questions that you can or cannot ask. That did not enough go around to Blue Eye and
Yeah.
oh.
We need two more.
I made 9 copies, so there should be enough.
Yeah, his,
Okay, so that was one of the things that I had discovered. I also spoke with Leslie. We don't have a current listing of the contractors. What we have is through the 4th quarter of 2016, and the reason why we would want the current list is because quarterly that list of contractors changes. But we wanted to start with the contractors who are in Ann Arbor and verify if they have an application that we can review, and if they ask the question, have you been convicted? Whatever that conviction is. The other thing is in previous commission meetings, we had discussed contacting all of the contractors with just a friendly reminder and a copy of our ordinance to say thank you for doing business with the city of Ann Arbor. Attached, please find a copy of the most current ordinance. We're absolutely certain that you're in compliance, but you may want to review this information. So I didn't get a chance to do that, but what I shared with Leslie that I will now share with you is that I will do a draft, as Rick did with the invite letter for guests that we want to present to the commission, and I will email that to you. Ideally, we want to get everyone's input because that will become the standard by which we will then contact all of the contractors. So it's a twofold message. We want to ensure that they have the most current ordinance. Our best information is that they receive a copy when they apply, but it's encompassed in other paperwork, and it may get lost in the process depending on who is ultimately awarded the contract. So we want to ensure that everyone who does business with the city has the most current copy of our ordinance. And then I'll continue the efforts in trying to obtain copies of job applications with the caveat of what I've already stated. Some don't have them. Some have them only if they have openings. Some have them only if you want to volunteer, but it's not an application. In another application that I had access to for one of the, I don't know that this company is a contractor, but it's the RIDE, or it used to be AAATA.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you from personal experience, not my own, but someone really close, that they do ask that question.
And how do they ask it? Since
Well, I'll read it to you so it's verbatim. I believe it says, have you been convicted of a felony? But let me be accurate with that. I also was able to, what I did in order to get the application for a couple of them, I actually filled out the application.
Yeah.
I didn't submit it, I just filled it out and so I could print it. And this one says, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
That's the AATA one?
No, that's actually the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum.
Oh, okay.
And they are a contractor with the city of Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Now, but contractors aren't covered by the, aren't covered by this, the resolution. Only employees.
I'm sorry?
I think only employees of the city are covered by the resolution.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But our efforts, Linda's and mine and whomever else may
See
want
who
to,
would be
because we,
expanded.
the
Okay.
goal is to
Yeah.
gather this
Got it.
information and
Yeah.
then propose to, city council. We had gotten a response from Nancy saying that either you,
Absolutely.
or Graydon could make that so that it now covers contractors
Absolutely.
who do business with the
Right.
I
city.
would be very
So
happy to
our
do that.
efforts are to gather the information of those contractors that we know are currently doing
Right.
business, but right now focusing on those that are in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
And so with that, we want to see whom of those contractors are asking this question. So that when we ask you to present that to city council, Sumi or Graydon or whomever, we can say our research has revealed the following. And for these reasons, we would ask that the ordinance be expanded to include contractors who do business with the city of Ann Arbor. So those are my very brief efforts, but I wanted to find for you what the RIDE
Yeah,
asks.
I can tell you what Ann Arbor Library asked. It says, have you ever been convicted of a crime except a minor traffic violation? If so, please state citation, date, and place where the offense occurred. And that's, I applied, or I said I was going to apply,
Did they
for
hire
a
you?
job for a part-time. This is for part-time, what did I say it was? Part-time bookshelver processor. I mean, so this is not one of the most responsible jobs ever.
I had that in 3 different places, don't say that.
I'm sorry. This is a very good job. But, I mean,
No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
But in reading that, the way that that question is worded, it is a violation of the Elliott Larson Act. Because the Elliott Larson Act
Oh, you
says
know,
that
you're
you
right.
cannot ask about misdemeanors. You can only ask about a felony.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's too broad. And so they're in violation even without our expanding our ordinance.
You know what? We can go back to the person who requested that.
Right. I did find the.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I did find the RIDE, and they actually have 2 questions where, if you read it, they're asking the same thing. But anyway, it says, have you ever been convicted of any offenses while in the military, National Guard, or military reserves? Then it asks, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Okay.
So, for, we wouldn't get into anything as it relates to the military. For the felony, basically, this type of information is what we would include in the research that we would then present and ask that council expand our ordinance to include those contractors who do business with the city. Obviously, there are some positions that clearly they would need to, those who are public servants who are, like the police. But my research so far is what I've explained. It may be a little difficult to get some. I brought an example. For example, the Community Action Network is one of those that did business, I don't know if they still are current, with the city. So they don't have any current openings, but they do have volunteer positions. And it has on here, if you are interested in volunteering at CAN, please email volunteers@canannarbor.org to get started. The only qualification is the volunteers have to be 16 years or older. So they have volunteer positions. I don't know how this works for applicants who may have a felony conviction, because it's a volunteer.
And they work with kids, so they may.
Yeah, I'm just saying, this is what we're experiencing with just the limited forays that we've engaged in thus far. and more than likely will be some we aren't going to be able to do. And then one final comment, and that is, with the listing that we receive of the contractors, we have email addresses, but we were told that sometimes that's just to the person who filled out the application.
We should get
So we
names.
thought, in my discussions with Leslie, it may be more beneficial to actually mail, because the addresses are supposed to be accurate, each of these contractors, which would incur a little bit of expense. But again, we don't have the most current. So for example, fiscal year 26, quarter 3, there were 73 contractors, and of that, I believe there were a dozen that did business with the city of Ann Arbor.
Okay. Well,
So I will send out a draft letter tomorrow to all of us. Please send your comments back to the HRC, because I'll send it out from there. Email, or do you want it to come from me? I can send it.
Yeah, you can send it.
Well, if it's HRC, then that's discoverable, right?
What do you
It-
mean discovery?
Like if somebody wanted to know our intercommunications. Yeah, that's the same.
Well, they'd have to
Cool.
FOIA. And they'll be able to FOIL the letter, but it should be clearly marked draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have some leeway of not, you don't usually wanna show, FOIA people don't usually wanna see the draft, and I don't know. It's not very,
I can
it's
send it
not
from
very
the
confidential.
HRC email, I'm just saying,
I would send
you
it
know,
from yours.
If it's
okay.
city business,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter whether it's going like,
Yeah,
just
that's
because
true.
I send from my private email,
Mm.
if I'm sending something regarding, let's say, Hillard Hines,
Mhm.
between our private, it doesn't exempt me.
Right.
FOIA covers
Mhm.
that.
Right.
So which account matters less?
I would say use the one for you that's the most convenient.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the same, because I have them on my desktop, so I just
Yeah.
click on
I don't know. I think we should talk for a minute about what kinds of messages we wanna send to contractors. And it seems to me, you don't wanna make it too hard to contract with the city, it's already hard.
Mhm.
But that we ought to start this, because we wanna do this once or twice a year. Do it in some way that is, useful for the contractor. It isn't just another, a lot of things that they have to do. But one of the things I thought would be useful is if you need to hire somebody from Ann Arbor, these are good resources, because we really like people who work with Ann Arbor, if they are hiring, to hire locally, I would think.
Well, obviously, we're saying that we want them to follow the law.
We do, yeah, we
But-
have to say that.
Is the question that you're asking, do we want them to do more than to follow the law, and then how do we do that? I don't know how you get that kind of leverage.
Well, if you just give them information, like, these are the places to get published. If what you also wanted to do is have them hire locally, for example, I think you'd give them the resources to do it.
So you're talking about encouraging them to
Just
hire?
encourage,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I would love to see that happen
yeah, I would.
in any municipality.
I believe the ordinance speaks to any federal contractor. I've forgotten the specific language, but I believe it states something to the effect they have to engage in efforts to hire locally or make a concerted effort or something like that.
Yes, that's right, they do.
But that's federal contractors only at this time.
I don't remember if that's,
Yeah.
it doesn't say anything that, in state. It's interesting.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, I don't, it's not a rule, but I think that maybe, people who work here, for example, in road construction and want somebody local, may not know how to do it easily. And just providing links to newspapers and.
Assuming you're on city council, are the police supposed to, are they encouraged to hire locally? No. I mean, I know that the law, the state law says that they don't have to, but that doesn't mean that they can't be encouraged to do it.
They certainly can't, yeah, they certainly could be encouraged to. Do they hire through human resources, or do they hire themselves, do you know?
I'm not sure. You mean internally, the police department itself not going through human resources?
Yeah, I was looking at their budget today, and they do have a budget for recruitment and hiring, so I thought maybe they do it by themselves, but I don't know.
I know that when we met with Cito when he was the chief, and he said that 95% of the employees, police employees, lived outside the city limits.
Like fire department.
And I'm not sure if this is how true this is,
That
but
was a serious shock for me.
I heard that they even discourage from the community because they believe that there might be, I mean, if you are local, you cannot reinforce
Really?
regulation against people that you know.
What?
You mean a
I'm
problem
not
with
sure.
not being arm's length
That is
enough
so
or
wrong.
something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is true, but I
Actually,
mean, I
they're
heard
saying
this from
community
some people
policing
who
is actually
applied.
better that
Yes.
people
Wow.
live in the
Yeah.
community. They have a stake in the community.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Did that
It's your people you
Yeah.
want to protect, right?
Yeah.
Was it because they perceived it to be a conflict of interest?
Right.
That, again, I'm not sure about that. I heard from people who
You know,
applied.
Because
Don't give
isn't
them
there,
friends tickets. to
right,
give
friends
people
or
who are not your
relatives?
friends
Yeah.
tickets.
So with that logic, well, we ought to have foreign soldiers.
We do another
Well, and we also ought to be serving as the Human Rights Commission for Traverse City.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
we could get that up.
If not Las Vegas.
I hope it's not
We
accurate.
could, I suspect we should wait till we get the report from
Yes.
Hillard Hines, but we certainly could create a motion
Mhm.
suggesting that, you know, that people be encouraged to, please encourage people to apply locally.
And to have good representation for all our community members. I mean, if you look at our police department, it's not really diverse.
No.
Well, yeah, no,
Yeah,
mean,
I
it-
think,
certainly know that.
you know, I think the way to start with this, and maybe this has already been done, but, you know, that's the sort of thing I think we would want to start by communicating with the chief about, right?
Mhm.
So what
Right.
efforts do you make? What have the challenges been? Because I suspect he'd have some things to say about why it is that so many people who are on the force don't come from this community, right? And then, after that kind of communication, then we can decide whether or not we want to make some formal recommendations.
Right.
But I, for one, am coming from a place of incomplete information on this. They may well be trying to hire locally, I just don't know.
We have talked to them about it.
Well, we
and-
tried to see her, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
and
and-
we certainly.
That was John Cito?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
that-
we talked to Baird about it too, Chief Baird.
I
Do you
I don't recall Baird's answer, but I recall being bothered by Cito saying that the salaries are not high enough for them to find places.
That would be my
You know, in Ann
expectation.
Arbor.
Right.
And I remember saying to him that they started higher salaries than teachers do. And, I mean, what kind of house you want? You know, you want to live on a hill in Devonshire? I mean, yeah, well, no,
No.
no.
One of the things that comes to mind, especially when I was in human resources, I don't know that there's a mandate, but it is certainly good practice for every employer to register with the unemployment office. Because applicants who receive unemployment are mandated by law to look for employment and document that they have contacted employers, at least a minimum of 2, weekly, in order, as a condition of receiving the benefits. The other piece of that is if an employer has a reduction in their workforce, they are mandated by law to give 60 days notice, minimum. Because what's happening is, it's called WARN, I've forgotten, I was looking up the acronym. It's something about the workers, it's an notice, it's a notification to the potential individuals who will be adversely impacted by that layoff or that separation. At any rate, employers, even contractors who may sustain that, let's say that they are doing business with the city and that contract is coming to an end and it's not gonna be renewed, or they're not gonna continue doing business, they are mandated by law to give a 60-day notice. And it has to be a notice posted, and it has the acronym WARN in big letters that says effective this date, 60 days out or better, this organization or this operation will no longer be in business. So because of those two requirements, I believe it just behooves the contractor or employer to certainly be familiar with those. I'm sure, I won't assume anything, they should know that, but if not, then that's something that we may want to consider putting on our website. I've seen it posted many times. I've certainly received the information when I worked in human resources. And so I would think that that was something that, along with this letter and the poster, our ordinance, we would want to communicate to the contractors. As I said, they should know, but in case they don't, this is a nice friendly reminder that here are two things that is beneficial for you. Register with the state of Michigan. It's a free service. It's all automated. It's so user-friendly. You know, children can do it. And then also just to make them aware of the fact that if they, for any reason, are ceasing operations, they are mandated by law to send that notification.
Okay. You're gonna draft a letter?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
draft the letter. It'll go out to everyone tomorrow, and then we just invite your comments. And then we want to come together and see how we're going to disseminate this information. We've talked about mail. We don't know that the addresses, the email addresses are current or accurate. For that matter, we don't know that the addresses are either, but we think we have a better chance of it getting to them via mail than email.
You know what, we might be able to put a form on the letter that said, please notify us of if you're the right person to receive this kind of information.
Okay.
And your email address.
Okay.
So that we make sure we get that.
But Pam, you're not saying that if you're going to go out of business, you have to tell the employees, give them 60 days notice, are
You have to tell the employees and the government.
I can think of 2 restaurants in Ann Arbor that went out of business and the employees didn't find out until they came to the door.
I'm familiar with that, but that was in violation of the act. It's called the WARN Act, W-A-R-N.
Wow.
I
And
can
there
tell you what
are-
it stands for. I just was looking at it. It's the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. It's a federal law.
Yeah, yes, it is. And so those two entities that did that, I'm sure, I don't know that. Let's put it this way. The penalties for violation are monetary and a citation.
Is that state or is it
That's
federal?
federal.
It's federal.
What if the building burns down and they go to the restaurant and let's say they don't have a work? Then it doesn't apply, right?
It doesn't
Only
apply
when the
because
employer
that's
is aware
Only if, yeah.
they're shutting down. Got it, got it. Okay.
Right, but usually if that were the case, that's temporary. They aren't going out of business. That's
Oh,
just,
I
you know what I mean?
Yes, I get it, I
Yeah.
get it.
So you
Okay.
might wanna have like, did you know, kinds of
Mhm.
just helpful information.
Yeah.
That would be, I think that they would be open to that. That's good. I also I'd be interested in hearing more about people being turned down because they,
Again, I
They're
mean, that's
local.
based on the feedback of an applicant.
Yes.
Not the city, so.
it's frightening. We could do things to encourage, to incentivize people to hire locally. And we could also consider that at some point, especially for Ann Arbor employment, for city employment.
I believe some businesses are doing that now. I know in certain disciplines, they do where there's a deficit and it's a hard to fill opening.
And police, by the way, is very hard to fill.
But that's national, I believe.
It is.
Yeah.
But there's something like
And they
locally
have sign-on.
1,200
Yeah,
positions that
they
are
are
empty
offering
open.
sign-on bonuses in some respects. And then like a bonus if you successfully complete whatever period of
Right.
time.
They're also offering sometimes scholarships, sometimes some kind of apprenticeship to begin with, to let them see if they're interested and if you're interested in them. I mean, there are lots of things that can be done, especially with police and fire, to encourage local involvement. And we can at least say that we're interested in it, but we probably need to wait until this report is out. Okay, you've got what you need for contractor compliance, is that true?
Well, we have to get I'd prefer to work, because I know that this information is antiquated.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
mean,
You mean
just
for
for
the
the
letter?
letter.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
No, we've got more work to do.
Right, I want a more current listing,
Okay.
yeah.
Status of complaint.
Well, there
And
are no new
no
ones.
names.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are no new written
Okay.
or phone.
Okay.
Just for laughs, if you want to see, there's a telemarketer who is soliciting on our email if we're interested in purchasing golf balls from China. So that's the only written
Well, we
I
communication.
wonder what it is about
I
our
don't
website
know.
that they didn't think it was on it.
I left it up there if you case you want to view
I
it.
saw it.
But there are no new complaints,
Oh,
and there
good.
are no.
Is that somehow a basis for a new complaint?
And so the only current one that I believe, well, there's two, but we mentioned them last month.
Mhm.
The one that David is working on, and one that Linda is following through with.
Mhm.
And from the one that Linda is working on, this speaks more to the language in our ordinance. So we may end up, in fact, I know the recommendation has been to expand that piece of that, the language in the ordinance to include veterans. So the specifics that I'm referring to speaks to educational association, I believe. And so we're getting very clear about just what that means. We know what the ordinance says, but there seem to be some difference in interpretation, I think is how I'll term
Yeah.
it. So we have contacted Nancy Niemela, and Linda is handling it with the person who expressed the inquiry.
Right.
So we don't have any update beyond what was shared last month, except that we will propose that the ordinance be expanded to include veterans
Mhm.
in that particular area.
And we'll clarify what the interpretation of educational association
Mhm.
means at some point.
Yeah.
Once we.
I'm trying to remember what area, I mean, veteran status is one of those protected classes generally in the ordinance. And is there, I'm trying to remember, we're thinking about expanding veteran status to what part of the ordinance?
To the educational piece.
Well, no, to the exception, I think, because people wanted to be able to give
Discounts.
discounts to
Oh.
veterans.
Discounts
And
to
we say
veterans,
you can't discriminate against
Right.
on the basis of being a veteran because it's a protected class, but the exception could be, if we wanted it to be, just like the exception is for educational association, that you could give students
Student discounts.
discounts, you could give veteran discounts.
Yeah.
Right.
It's that.
Okay. I can report briefly on mine, to say that it is moving forward. I expect that sometime next week is looking like I will be sitting down with the complainant and the respondent and an attorney representing the respondent's company who will be present by phone. And the goals of that meeting will to hash out what happened, make sure the respondent understands how the complainant felt, and to talk concretely about what might respondent do to avoid similar situations in the future. That's where I'm hoping that the meeting will go. But I've been in contact with the complainant about, or the complainant about it, and she's at every step of the way. You know, she's been engaged, but a little bit skeptical. I told her I couldn't promise what the outcome of this meeting would be, but she was willing to go forward with it, given that I was optimistic that something constructive could come out of it. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, it's taking a long time, and the summer has slowed everything down with
Yeah.
vacations and things like that. One thing I will add about this complaint, today when I was dropping the flyer off, as I mentioned earlier, this flyer off at the Spectrum Center, the director, who I know, said, "Oh yes, we know about the Human Rights Commission. In fact, I referred someone there a while ago, and it became clear from our conversation in which, whoops, there goes my name. Now no one will know who I am on this side or that side. That this particular claimant, because he said, did this happen in X institution, or this kind of institution? I said, it did. I said, I think I know that complaint. So this is all to say that here was an office at the University of Michigan who could not help this complainant, who happens to be an employee of the University of Michigan, because it happened at an institution outside of the university, at a private institution, and he knew to go ahead and refer her to us, which I thought was great.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. And we're learning a great deal from these complaints.
Yes, we are.
And I think we're documenting them for ourselves as well. And maybe there'll be a way to let people know some of our learnings. Thank you guys for working on this. This is important stuff. Excellent. Incorporating guest presentations in the HRC.
Okay, that would be me.
Yes. You might want to say again why you think this is important, because.
Yes, well, I believe that, it would be useful for us to hear from major organizations that deal with human rights issues in the community, and it would be important for them to be acquainted with us, and I think for many reasons, and I think it would help us sort of build our network of contacts and make a lot of these organizations feel comfortable with our organization, with our commission. So towards this end, I've generated 3 documents, 2 of which were shared with you by Leslie. One is a draft of a letter that would go out to the organizations that we chose or that we would solicit to come and speak to us. And I hope everybody's had a chance to look at that. And David has already provided me with some suggested additions to it, which are very good. But I encourage anybody and everybody to, tell me anything they think is missing or incorrect in this letter. And then I also, I make mention in this letter of a form which I have copies of here, which would go with this letter, and so any organization that chose to speak to us would circle dates on this form that when they would be, or when a representative of their organization would be available to speak to us. I noticed, by the way, that we have a meeting on Valentine's Day, so I don't know if that's going to be a very popular day for people to come and speak to us. And then I've also provided you, or you might have had a chance to look at a list of local organizations, and I apologize for those lists. It's dreadful.
It is, and I
it is
apologize
pretty dreadful.
for helping create that list.
I really just copied names of organizations that were on a list that Leslie provided me, but without really a sense of context. So there are some that are baffling, some that are meaningless, and some that are just plain missing. I mean, there are no LGBT groups that I believe on this list. And
Spectrum is one.
Yeah.
what's that?
Spectrum.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay, good. So But also, there were, I mean, the NAACP is not on this list, for
Right.
example. So I encourage this is not a sacrosanct list.
If the point of this is to ask, like, human rights organizations to come in, like, organizations that focus on human rights, why do we have, for example, the Kiwanis Club or AnnArbor.com?
You're so correct. I mean, these are not relevant organizations. They were simply, I just slavishly copied them from a list.
They're less central. I think they do
Yes.
have some interest, but they're.
But they're not
but
human
they're-
rights organizations.
No,
No,
they're
they're
not.
not.
But
They're not.
We
I-
didn't originally say human rights organizations.
I guess
but that's it.
in my
Makes sense.
if in my defense, all I really wanted to do here was to sort of stimulate the mind and encourage
Yeah.
people to think of what organizations they would really want to have come before us. So
There is some editorial comments.
so I guess those are the three my three contributions. I'd love to get rolling on this fairly soon, but I really I really want to get everybody's input. So
So you want input on the letter, and you want 10 names of
yeah,
of
10
organizations.
to 12 names.
Okay.
Yes. And then
collectively from the whole, you want to invite 10 to 12 organizations, is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, I think we probably ought to invite more organizations than we actually have room
slots, yeah,
for.
okay.
And then, so what I'll do is I'll just collect everybody's, suggestions, and we'll sort of tabulate them, and if we have, 10 to 12 clear winners, I'll share those with the group, and we'll get something out to them.
What does that mean?
That sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Any questions or comments?
When do you want the information about the letter and the 10 things?
I guess,
When
just,
would be reasonable for people?
yeah, I mean, if people can get something back to me in the next couple of weeks, so I could,
I'd
Is that-
give a date.
oh, really?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
like next week sometime.
Okay, next week. Okay, so what's,
Don't you think?
what's
I
a
mean,
week
it might.
from today?
The 19th of July.
No later than the 19th of July. How's that?
July
Uh,
19th, okay.
Okay,
And
July
then will we
19th.
collectively make a decision at the next meeting, or?
Yeah, but yeah, what?
Or
And
or
the
maybe
letter.
the top, get the most
Yeah, I'll just do
votes.
I'll do the math. and figure
But
out
what if,
which-
But I
what if
mean,
we
did you
each
want
choose different
comments about the
organizations?
Yeah, what I didn't
Completely
want to do
separate.
is have a debate here about who's
Yeah.
better and who's,
But,
what
yes,
organizations
but
are better or
if we
worse.
each chose groups with no overlap, then there wouldn't be any organizations that have the most
That's true.
votes, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we'll just see what happens, I guess.
yeah, well, you'll have a chance to,
Yeah. So,
Makes
would the
sense.
smartest thing be for me to, as soon as I've sort of tabulated everything, to share the list
yeah, why
with
don't you do that?
and
Yeah,
you'll disseminate it?
yeah,
Okay.
and then if people have strong feelings about any other thing that's
Yes.
not, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
okay,
Because ultimately, we'd like to hear from all of them, so
sure. Sure.
that question is sort of,
Yeah.
who wants to come and talk to us, but I'd like to hear.
But is our criteria still human rights organizations?
Or somehow involve,
Because are you looking for diverse communities, or are you looking for human rights organizations?
Oh, I
Because
see.
there can be,
I see what she's-
there can be overlap, but there
Right.
also doesn't necessarily
That's
have to be.
right.
Yeah, I guess to that point, I would, there are organizations that are not defined as human rights organizations, but that have a lot of sort of interesting perspective on challenges to people's human
I know,
rights.
but then,
Yeah, that's a good. that's a
but
good
then,
point.
like, your letter doesn't make a lot of sense to certain organizations then, because you're
Right.
addressing them as one of the most important groups involved in human rights activities.
so you might want to change that phrase.
Yeah, that's fair.
So he has said that, I asked him briefly, along with the organizations, to send your comments or changes regarding the letter to him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what criteria we were using.
Well,
because it seems
no,
to
you're
me-
asking, because we didn't,
That's a
I
good
don't think
question.
anybody ever
Yeah.
thought about what the criteria was.
So it seems to me that like the
That's a good
Human Rights,
question.
the Human Rights Commission also lacks some relationships with just diverse communities
Right.
in
Yeah.
Ann Arbor
Sure.
period,
Right.
not just human rights organizations. But I
Because
think it can be
Yeah.
mutually insulting to human rights organizations and diverse communities to conflate the two as being the same thing.
Yes.
Well, or just,
I think that's a great point.
I
Vivian,
do.
but let's not assume also that every entity has a connection or representation for human rights.
Mhm.
For example, when you put here the Muslim law,
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. If anybody from the Muslim community has something, they're going to go to the MCA, which is the Muslim and the mosque here.
yeah,
So even
And
though
so
that
the
they are,
mosque would be central.
yeah.
It would
So
be something
even though that
we
they're not a
should be
human
involved.
rights entity,
right.
but that's where people would turn
Yeah.
into.
sure.
So
Or
it
the-
would be, yeah, it would be somewhat strange to call a religious organization a human rights organization, one of the
Yes,
leading
of
human
course.
rights organizations. But like, I think that we should be focusing on getting more impact, building relationships with diverse communities, maybe over the ACLU,
Mhm.
because we will be working more with diverse communities within Ann Arbor than with the ACLU on a
Sure.
regular basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I encourage you,
Yeah.
anyone to, if there's phraseology that seems more accurate
Mhm.
to that end, please,
Yeah.
suggest it.
Let me ask this, given the fact that the next thing on our agenda is about getting involved, the diverse communities that are somewhat marginalized to input into the police project. And that again reminds me how there are communities we really don't have contact with. Maybe that should be a high priority for this first block of 10 that we're doing. Because we are going to be doing more and more outreach, just because of the police oversight work that we're doing. So maybe that is especially relevant right now.
Sure.
Of course, mental health is also relevant to that.
Yes, absolutely.
But maybe that would be a way of contexting this a little bit more. I don't know.
I guess this is all begging the question for me is, what is the goal of these presentations? It's to educate us, and presumably maybe perhaps also educate whoever is presenting
Well, the public.
about us. It's both, but what are we trying to gain? Are we trying to forge a relationship? Are we trying to learn more about the needs of particular groups?
Yes,
absolutely.
That
Agenda,
perhaps
yeah.
warrant protection under the ordinance? Because I think if we talk, if I understand what the purpose is, that's gonna really help me, and I think this is what you were getting at, Vivian, help
Yeah.
me recommend
Mhm.
organizations that should come
Absolutely.
present,
Yeah, I don't think those two things are mutually
Either or,
exclusive.
exactly.
right?
I think that, I think that there, are a variety of things we would want to accomplish. But getting deeper insights into, human rights issues that affect different parts of the community
Okay.
is one part. Forging this helping to, and just by in a sort of a natural result of that contact is building forging a relationship.
Sure.
So I don't think those two things are necessarily in conflict.
So maybe it's a matter of, instead of saying you are, I can't remember what your language is, but doing
yeah.
or one of the foremost human rights organizations, you are an organization that is concerned with human
yeah,
rights issues
Exactly.
in Ann Arbor. And that way,
Yeah.
we could invite the ACLU if we felt like,
Right.
the ACLU was worth having here. Putting off the question about whether or not we should. But that opens it up both to
Yeah.
organizations
Yeah.
like that, as well as organizations with that have members of the community who are perhaps more marginalized as members in large numbers or significant numbers who might be interested in these issues. And that gets around what you're worried about, I think, a little bit, Vivian, by the framing of it as, You know,
Yeah,
we're not gonna insult people by calling them a human rights organization.
just because
Right,
their
right.
membership is
But they're-
diverse.
but they're-
I also
Yeah, I'm not
don't-
sure I just used the right language either, but.
Yeah, because I also don't know that, there is this, like, for example, there's this huge, like, almost 400 member, like, social organization in Ann Arbor for queer, like, professional women.
Mhm.
And so that'd be an interesting group,
Sure.
but like it's
Yeah.
a social group.
Yes.
We're not a human right, we're not on paper concerned with human rights.
Yes,
Um,
yes, I mean, that,
Like, I
that's.
don't,
So you.
So maybe in that case, you'd want to say concerned with, issues of affecting, I don't know, or
Okay.
I don't think we can necessarily, in this one group of 10, organizations, encapsulate every issue. Or, but I think maybe the place to start is to think about the organizations that have the most direct responsibility for dealing with people's troubles.
But these organizations quite often are beyond the Ann Arbor community. For example, when we talk about the ACLU,
Sure.
it's not an Ann Arbor organization, it's a national one.
But-
Same thing, for example, if CARE, I'm not sure if you're familiar with
That's right.
CARE. If anything, if anybody has a complaint from the Muslim community, that is if it's big enough, that's the first organization to contact. So we need more definition. We need to decide here in this group
Right.
if we want to target those big organizations, which I think is a good idea. At least we have that connection with them and they understand, they know our existence, or if we want to keep it local here. So, for example, if I want to talk about representation from the Muslim community, am I talking about the local mosque here or the CARE organization, which is a national organization?
CARE is, how is that?
It's the Council of Islamic Relations, and they are, again, if anybody has a problem, if they are discriminated against, they are the ones who would be involved.
Okay.
CAIR.
Oh, CAIR, okay.
In my mind, what we're trying to do is get organizations that can enrich our work.
Mm-hmm.
And first, when I saw that the Burns Park Senior Center was on there, I said, what? Because I used to go over there to play Scrabble. And other people would go over there to, for bridge.
Yeah.
But why would they be here?
Yes,
If though, we had people who did frequent the Burns Park, because it's blocked down the street from me, senior center, and they came and they gave their concerns about human rights issues in the community, and they've been here for 40, 50 years, they might be able to enrich our work. I don't think anybody would come, frankly.
yeah,
But if that's the paradigm I'm working from,
yeah.
I can handle it. But to say there's a human rights organization, no, and
No,
you don't have to explain that again.
I understand that.
You know,
I think
and
that's
so
very
if
valid.
we each came up with one organization who we think ought to be represented here, and it could be that CARE, was that the group you said? Because there are insights and perspectives that they have that I probably don't have, that could enrich our work.
And they're located like in Southfield also, aren't they?
Their
They've got a local
their office in Michigan
Yeah.
here in Southfield,
So-
correct,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
but I also question whether or not some of the bigger organizations really have the time to come all the way out to Ann Arbor to give a 10-minute presentation to a municipal human rights
That's-
Well,
commission.
that one probably
They
would,
have their representations.
because that's a
here,
local
yeah,
branch and
yeah.
people come
That's the question.
from here to go to
And you don't
complain.
know until you ask.
That's true
So
too.
true.
And again, it's just a matter of making a decision here. Do you want to stick to the local organizations or the
Yeah.
ones who really get
Well-
involved, whether they are local or national?
We've got some local, like Fair Housing is southeastern Michigan, but it's a bigger organization than that, but that's local and we fit that kind of model as well. There are lots of things we could learn, there's no question about it.
Right.
We just have to narrow it down a little bit. Do you wanna talk about it more? Do you wanna, see what people come up with?
I guess I just encourage people to, you know, to come forth with ideas, and let's see what happens.
Okay, well, you can send emails until we finally come up with something everybody can go with.
And if in the course of making your list, you sort of reach there's something you kind of want to express about the kind of organizations you think we ought to be looking at in this context, feel free to share that along with your
I think,
suggestions.
when would this be sent out? Because I think that we do need a lot more input from student organizations, because we are very out of touch with student organizations and the student population here in Ann Arbor, but it's summer, no one's checking their emails.
Well,
We-
yeah, it doesn't have to, we can certainly, time some of these to.
And are these
Times
going to
up.
be emailed out at all, or like physical mail?
I was just, assuming I would do physical mail.
But I don't know that like a lot of student organizations, for example, like have
Mailbox.
mailboxes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
can
then
email
we can, well, maybe, I guess the logistics can also be adjusted to the organization.
Right, and probably what you do is look them up and find out who's the main contact
Right,
person, and
exactly.
maybe even talk to them and say,
Yeah, or just,
letters
yeah,
coming,
hand it to
because we're
them, yeah.
talking only about 10 groups.
Right,
Okay, so by the 19th, we should send you something.
yeah, that would be good.
Okay, good,
Thank you.
good. Well, this has been interesting and useful, and it leads into the next thing. And that is that we did talk to Deborah.
Wait, I do have a question. So after
Sure.
we send all those to you, will we then discuss how to choose from amongst those?
Well,
maybe like
what
100
I will do is I will sort of come up with a report about, whether there were, groups that were,
Clearly the top
floated to the
three,
top.
yeah, exactly.
And, and then, but give everybody the entire list. And we can, then I just think at the next monthly meeting, we can discuss, how we want to pare down that list.
Yeah,
Okay?
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for
Thanks, Rick.
thinking about it. I think this has got lots of potential.
Great.
I want to talk to you a little bit about police review project and where we are on it. We talked to Deborah Kirby, who's the head of this project for Hillard Hines, at our last meeting, and she went over the fact that they have been through lots and lots of interviews, one-on-one interviews and group interviews, and there's been 2 listening sessions. I got a little bit of feedback from some of the one-on-one interviews, and that was that the people I talked to, and there are not very many, said that they felt very listened to. They were impressed with how responsive she was and how intense she was about listening. They felt they were really heard and understood. I would like more I'd like more feedback. I think it'd be nice if people who have interacted with them would send us feedback. And I also would like to know if people have had negative feedback as well, because.
Oh, Lord. There's a group that's working against white supremacy that I have met with now since that last meeting 3 times, and you'd have to ask God to count how many emails I've gotten. They're not pleased with how it's going.
Okay, so the next, one of the things that Deborah asked for, and Howard Will Azarus asked me for also, is that we help. Deborah has, if you remember, we had an offer from one person, a minister at a local church, who said, I will put together, if you're interested, I'll put together a group of people and help you facilitate that. And that seemed like a good model for getting to people who we haven't gotten to before.
Absolutely.
I talked to Deborah about it. She has reached out to them, and last I heard, she had I think it was last Monday that I think she talked to him and
Good.
hopefully will set something up. She also got another offer that sounded similar. And I don't know very much about that, but I know there's at least 2. I've been encouraged to get as many to help with this process is to get little, maybe grouplets together where somebody who they trust is part of that group can help facilitate and meet maybe at somebody's house or at a coffee shop or whatever and get some really in-depth conversations going with people who are especially close to this problem. This group sounds like a possibility, and if they're
Oh, there's no
emailing
doubt
you,
about that.
would you?
Well, when I said that I can't count how many emails, there's no way that it's been less than 5 a day for the last three or 4 weeks. No way.
Really?
No way.
Wow.
No way.
So
Can
there-
you tell
no
me
way.
what, is it
No
because
way.
they haven't been reached out to or the
They don't feel that,
interaction?
they don't feel that H&H has been reaching out to people in the community who are marginalized.
Would they be willing to talk, do you
Oh,
think?
I have no doubt that they would. No doubt.
So what do we need to do to put together a
Oh.
group of them?
I'll ask.
Please, please.
Yes, please,
I'll ask-
please,
I'll ask
yes.
that before I put on my pajamas tonight.
Okay, let's do it. How about, could we get a group of people from the Muslim community,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Sure.
Can you facilitate? Can you
I
facilitate?
can, I can. I mean,
Or
is there a date?
is there a what?
Is there a date
We
for
have
the
talked to
meet?
Kirby, right? A date.
A date?
for the-
No, there's not a
Okay.
date, but we'd like to do it as soon as possible. I know she wants to write a report, but she has been given extra time by the city administrator to do this, and I wanna see it done as well as we possibly can do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, do we know when they are going to be back in town?
No, we don't, but we can,
But you're talking about a telephone meeting or what?
if,
Or Skype.
If they need to fly in, they have to fly in.
That's right.
It's
Well-
worth the meeting. If you're meeting with 10
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
in a congregation with a pastor, if I were her, I would fly in. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we can try to set up a day
Yeah.
or something.
maybe one.
But
two
if you,
days
if the
and-
group says yes, and they give you some days, and your group
we
says some
can-
days.
Yeah,
can
coordinate,
write
morning,
on,
evening, maybe.
Sure, we can coordinate and
Okay.
let's talk.
Yeah, as soon as I get back to the ranch, I'll.
Okay.
That would be great. What other groups? Vivian? We have hardly anybody from the Asian community at all, I think,
Mhm.
responding to this. Do you have any idea how we could get together a group of people who might be willing to talk about it?
Just a physical group of people? I mean, it is kind of hard in the
They
summer.
could be they could be Skype. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to cover this, but let's say we're open to it.
Open to Skype interviews?
I think she's open to anything.
I can talk to some people, but they're just people in my social network.
That's okay.
Well, or if you know of a person who is part of this, you talked about a 400 person group that may be interested in sending, there might be some people in that group.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some people in a local church group or I mean, I don't know how, it's an interesting question. How do you get to people who generally are trying to keep their heads down and not be,
Go to where they are.
go to where they are?
Absolutely.
Okay, so where are they?
Yeah, I mean, congregation, mosques and churches, community groups, that's the first thing that came to my mind, that we would arrange something in the church or the Arab American Culture
Yeah.
Center. That's where we would bring them.
I mean, I don't know if they went, I mean, we have said this again and again, Arrowwood Community Center, I mean, they really different demographics, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know one way, I have suggested that to her.
Absolutely.
What
And I don't know whether or not she was going.
Arrowwood Community Center?
Oh, Arrowwood, oh,
Arrowwood.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Do you know if she's been there, Leslie?
You know, I don't know. She said I think she has been there and talked to the people in charge. I mean, that's what she's done more of. That's what we heard at one of the listening sessions, that she talks to the people in charge. And they do have opinions, and they do know different things, but they're not the same as the people
No.
who
Consumer,
are
yeah, no,
at
they're
all.
not.
No, no, no.
Right. So maybe we could get a community center group going at Arrowwood. I can call them and ask.
Well, I know the director.
Do you?
Of Arrowwoods, and there's a resident who lives there that I know who's lived there over 30 years.
Is it Pat?
It's Pam.
You're gonna ask Pat too, that might be a good idea,
I
why
can
don't
ask
you
her.
ask
Mhm.
her?
I can ask
Ah,
Mm.
thank you.
I'll just make the call.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty, I know when legal aid goes down to Arrowwood, there's lots of people that just show up to talk to us, so I
Yeah.
find it hard to believe that you can't just find the right contact person.
Exactly.
And the director is very good at getting the residents to come. They
Right.
post it, they contact them directly,
Great.
and they, they put the date out and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
done, and they
Okay.
come.
I think the first question is for Deborah, is has she done it? I mean, I just don't know. I've
I don't
suggested
know
No,
that-
we asked
but-
it, I think
asked
that
here.
came up at that listening session at,
Brian,
Bryant Community
Brian.
Center.
yes, I think that came up.
and I think it
And I
even came up the next night at our meeting
It
last
did, and
month,
I
yeah.
I think
thought,
so.
I've watched us many times since that, that meeting. And I thought that I heard her say that she had contacted Arrowwood. Now, who?
But
and-
contacted is a generic term, she
Yeah,
could have
true.
very well
An email to a
contacted.
random
Right,
address.
Exactly.
So that's
yeah.
why I'm gonna go to the source and say,
Yeah.
have you been contacted by them?
Okay.
Yeah. And do you think
And
people
if
would
you
like to
had-
talk to these?
Well, I personally know a resident, like I said, who's been there for 30-plus years.
Mhm.
And she will know, and she's 90 years old,
Well,
but
bless
she's
her soul.
very, very active, and she would know.
Okay. So let's see if we can get some groups going.
Yeah.
And then think of it if you know somebody. We don't have too much time. I really would like to see more outreach and more greater depth than we have right now. And I think City Administrator Lazarus is on board with that.
So with that, I think I read that somewhere, that the survey is to close Saturday, so will that be extended?
I have not heard that it's to be extended.
Okay, so then you only have until Saturday to get.
She still can do this, and it may be extended. I don't-
Survey is different, this is
Yeah.
interviews, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the survey is different.
Mm.
I don't know that it's going to be extended, although my understanding was they were just gonna keep it open, and then at some point, I mean, they're gonna, you can aggregate the data and report it, and who knows if they will keep looking at it, but I think they're gonna just keep it open. That was what I was told originally. Just so you know, the city council just passed an extension, or an amendment. And we sent out, you found it, and we sent out the information about it. What the extension involves is developing a training program on community outreach, community engagement. And I think that this is something that, I know that something Deborah was concerned about was that needed to be a first step before thinking about what else. Any kind of interaction requires a certain amount of community
This is-
engagement
skill to begin with.
Training for police officers?
Yes.
Yes.
So they got, it was unanimously approved at
Was this the $30,000?
$30,000.
Yeah.
And so Hillard Hines is going to put together a module or something to
They-
train the officers about
To allow
community
them to
engagement?
train themselves.
To allow them to train themselves.
So it's a training module they're doing, they're developing,
Hillard Hines is.
yes. That they know about because they've done the interviewing, so they kind of know what needs to be done in a unique way, because they have been interviewing, one of the things they've done is interviewed I think they've interviewed all the police officers, or at least all the supervising police officers, and done pretty extensively, because they are also, if you remember, helping them get accreditation. So, So we're basically gonna be waiting for the report. The report's gonna come out a little bit later than they thought, so it's probably the end of summer. And what did I want to say about it?
So do they define training? I mean, when they say they spend that, or they have allocated that budget $30,000 for training the police officers, what is it then? I mean, how are they going to train?
I have not seen, and I
Does
don't think
that
anybody
include
has seen.
culture diversity? I mean, learn about the community that they are in, I mean, how to deal with different groups? Is that included in that training?
I think this is different kind of I think this training has to do with community engagement. One of the things that's happened that I know the police are concerned about and Hillard Hines was concerned about, is that from about 2005 or something on, police have been cut drastically. The numbers have been cut drastically. They were doing what they called community policing before that time. So they were assigned to be very proactive in community, in getting the community engagement and respect and knowing the communities well and being able to do some preventative work.
Mm-hmm.
When they were cut as drastically as they were, they had to become only reactive. And cuts took place at least until 2011, and it's still about at the same level as it was in 2011, although they don't do the dispatch work. There are a lot of things they don't do that they used to do. So I don't know how that adds up. But they've lost the ability to do much of the engagement that sort of is the foundation for the kind of policing that I think the city needs and the report asks for.
But that's exactly my point. I mean, since they do not have that luxury of having extra people to be in the hoods, I mean, the present police officers need to learn, as you said, they need to know their community well. So what are they doing in that regard? I mean, how are they learning
This
to
is going
know
to-
their community very well?
I think this is going to be part of the report. But that is a key. And how are we helping them? By giving them lots of feedback and input. And so far, we have been, and Deborah said this when she was here, that most people don't really know what the police do. And so there's gotta be a lot of change. One of the things that when we chose Hillard Hines, we chose from the best. These are the people who've gone from city to city doing this stuff. What they're doing is pretty new. We don't, I think they're learning on the job. It's hard work. Having been a consultant for many years, I know it's hard work. I hope we get feedback, but I know that some people are happy and some people aren't, and we're gonna try to do as much as we can to get as good information as possible and see what comes out of it. And then I think we're going to then have to look at it and say, is this what we want? But there's a process, we're invested in it, and I think we're doing the best we can.
Well, if we don't have police oversight, I'm gonna be very upset.
Pardon?
If we don't have police oversight, I'm going to be very, very upset. And there are many people in the community who will too. And I've said that to them when they were last here. I've said it to them to their face. That's crucial.
But this is my question, because sometimes I hear this thrown around at city council table too. We don't want to prejudge the outcome and all that, so we don't even know whether there is going to be police oversight. So I don't know where all this comes from, because I thought the report clearly stated
clear.
Am I wrong?
No, you
Because
know.
Our
sometimes
report certainly did.
our
You
report
know,
said that after 1 year of work, all of you put in, hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, all of you put in, the outcome was, we are getting an auditor not to find out whether we need a police oversight board, but rather how to set it up. That's what, we wanted them to do a community engagement, study the police practices, and then come up with what is appropriate for Ann Arbor.
I think that's what they're going to do.
So, this is my question. So the, was it an RFP or an RFQ that?
RFP.
RFP, right?
Mhm.
Wasn't that clearly stated when we hired them, their task was to help define that?
Part of their contract says.
So there's nothing
This is what we are going to look at.
prejudging, we are not prejudging the
Well,
outcome. We
If
want,
they say that
we don't need an.
we don't need it, they've got to lay out a good
Right.
argument and
Okay.
something else.
Okay, got it.
And then we get to counter it. I mean, we'll do the best we can, but yes, they know that they've got to address that issue, and
I
that's
just
a
wanted to go on
key
record
issue.
again, especially I wanted to go on the record because our minutes have been so sketchy.
Right.
And I want clarity on that.
Yeah, I think we need to put that in the minutes.
Well, there were
because,
two things that I recall in the request for a proposal. The recommendation for establishing the oversight was moved from phase 2 to phase 1.
Right.
And when they first met with us prior to commencing their efforts, I wasn't involved in the selection process, but I asked them if they had any history of recommending oversight review boards. And they said yes, because I wasn't involved in it. I didn't need to be. I'm not concerned that I wasn't. But I wanted to, in asking that question, get some insight as to what they have done previously to know what they might do going forward. And they assured us, because the three of them were here at that meeting, that they regularly recommended an oversight board, whatever it was termed, that they had a history of doing that, and then, not long history, but at least there is some past precedent for doing it. I guess I'm just, with this most recent development, I'll call it, it just seems to be, for me, like they've gotten sidetracked. Like this is no longer, maybe because it's taking so long.
Yeah.
And then there's the great unknown. We don't know what they're doing. And when
Right.
we ask, it's like pulling teeth.
Right.
You know?
And there's, I'm still, sure
So
they're
it's
still
the
trying
great
to-
unknown, and we're supposed to trust them implicitly that they're gonna do what the proposal says, but we won't know that, because I remember asking Deborah at the last meeting, you all may recall this, before it is a done deal, will we have access to that to even, look at it, evaluate it, make recommendations, suggestions, changes? She said she'd have to check with the city,
Right.
because they have to adhere to whatever the contract says. Okay, so I'm still in the dark. My point, my point is I'm no wiser than I was before they began.
Yeah. Well, we certainly still have a voice, and we will use it. What I can tell you is we unanimously chose these people out of the 6 because they seemed the most competent, because they seemed to be very strong belief in community involvement in police. Do you agree with that?
Most of it.
I mean, that's what they said. I realize it's all words, but.
No, most of it.
And they wanted to see. They thought we were creative enough that we could do something. We could build on it. We could actually be a model.
I haven't lost faith in them. I'm simply saying that trust is an interesting word. As long as everything is copacetic, I trust you. If they say that they don't think we need oversight, if they say they think all we need is an advisory group, then no, I'm not happy. Because I don't, because every advisory group I've seen has no teeth. None whatsoever. And that's from police to colleges and high schools and corporations. What do the advisors do? Nada.
Advise.
Right.
Yeah, put it on the resume, is that what you said? Yeah. Anyway. And,
I'll be very honest, my discomfort with that $30,000 contract was, they were doing this independent audit, okay? They were going to come out with a report. And yet, they have here become a consultant to the police department to do a module. Sometimes I feel this kind of quid pro quo kind of create conflict of interest. This is I'm a CPA, I'm always thinking in terms of independent, so I'm going to audit a company and I'm seeing they need to upgrade their accounting, so can I have a contract? I don't think that's kosher. I mean, once your report is over, you need the city to do A, B, C, D, and E, and you're telling them, you know what, we are really good at doing C and D. And then if there's a bid out, you bid for it and you do the module, I don't have a problem with that. But while this is going on, I was really taken aback when I was city council and this comes up for a 30-day, they become a consultant and they're going to do a module. But I could be wrong, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I'll just put it out here because
Yes.
when I feel something, I just say it out and you guys can, maybe I'm totally wrong, maybe I'm totally off, so, but.
Well, I had those same concerns.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
because
Okay.
why did it have to be appended to
Yeah.
the request for proposal? Why wasn't it a
Exactly.
separate entity? And if
Exactly.
that's the case, then let the police get funded themselves, since they're the ones who want the accreditation or the training or
Exactly.
whatever it is.
Exactly.
If they're already helping them with accreditation in that arena, whatever that is, it should be separate and distinct. I agree that it has the appearance of being a conflict of interest. But speaking from a position of ignorance, I don't really know that. That's what I refer to when I say it's the great unknown. But my own impression of this is that this was supposed to be, and I shared this with Leslie, a neutral, independent party that has no ties to anyone, so that you maintain the integrity of the work.
Absolutely, yes.
And there's no, there's
Now
not
they're
even the
training
appearance
module.
of,
Yes.
collusion, and I know
This
that's
is
a
my
strong
thought.
word,
Absolutely.
but, people base a lot of things on perception, not that they're accurate or that they're legitimate, but I'm just saying, this is muddy, and in my opinion, this is messy, and I don't like mess.
So you're good at it.
See, I always take this up. We have to adhere to the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants Code of
Yes.
Ethics. I mean, it's very important
Yes,
because
it is.
what we put as sign off is considered independent. I mean, it has that weight. And it clearly says even an appearance of conflict, because it undermines our whole profession.
Right.
Then it's an audit means nothing, right?
Right.
A CPA's audit, because she works with a company, she gets contracts out of them. I mean, so for me, that the appearance is as important. You're right. It could be perception. There might not be any, but it just bothered me. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out
Now,
there,
let me
guys.
tell
Okay.
you what the city administrator said, and it does make some sense, again, to me as a consultant. They came here, their phase 2, and phase 1 is to begin with this process. And I think what happened was that they found that that the police were not ready to start the process that they have already contracted for. So it's a new piece of work that they did not realize needed to be done before they could finish the next step in the contract.
What is that? What is the next phase of the contract where they felt this had to be done? Because-
the next phase is putting in some kind of a
Police oversight?
police oversight or
What?
community outreach.
But why
And
did
they
that
have not
become
had-
Hillard Hines' responsibility?
Exactly.
Because they're responsible for kicking off the
That I get.
process.
Yeah.
Why didn't the police on their own complete their work so that when Hillard Hines came in to do their piece, this was done or was already in the process?
I don't think anybody knew what it was.
Somebody knew. They obviously knew. That's why they asked for the $30,000 to get it done.
Right, no, they didn't know at the beginning of the contract. No,
Okay.
I mean, I think it was
Okay,
a
I
need.
understand that, and I'm not picking on you, Leslie.
Look,
I'm just.
I have not
But I'm
seen a
saying,
co-
this appears to be, the police certainly knew that they needed to get this done, okay?
No, they didn't,
How come they didn't?
because I'm guessing,
Okay. Okay, so at what point did the light bulb go on and it struck them that they didn't have something done that they needed to have done? And is Hillard Hines now convenient?
I'm guessing that it has to do with the lack of community engagement and the fact that the police didn't realize that they're really only reactive and that it isn't there.
So-
Okay, but.
And
but
that
this-
you can't do the next step. You
Okay,
can't-
okay, I get that.
Okay.
But that didn't Look, none of us were born yesterday. This didn't just suddenly come up. This had to have been known. You see what I'm saying?
We knew it's in the report.
Okay, but my point is, the police knew too, because we gave them a copy. We got a response from Baird. Okay, the city administrator knew. My point is this, it just smacks to me of a certain amount of convenience that suddenly they realize they don't have something done. And here's, you know, Salvation Hilder Hines to the rescue. And now we're all on hold.
I don't think the police asked for it.
Okay, but my point is this. You're saying, and I'm speaking blind because I don't know,
Yeah,
but
we
you're
don't-
saying
we don't
this,
know.
this piece that has to suddenly now be done. You can't tell me that they learned this only because Hillard Hines has commenced what we contracted for them to do.
My point is pushing it even one step further. Even assume they didn't know about it, and they came to the realization precisely because
Right, they got
Hillard
prepared.
Hines was auditing and saying, "Oh boy, that's like a company. We don't have internal controls. We need to put in internal controls." Then you don't give the auditor the job to put in the
Exactly.
You
Because
contract it
that
out.
that's clearly a conflict. You can't separate the two
Yeah,
because they're
I
so
don't see why I
intermingled
find
now.
it-
There is nothing about that whole outcome that is going to be independent, neutral,
Yes.
and no conflict of interest. Even the
Exactly.
appearance, the
Appearance,
sound of it
appearance, yes.
already
Yes.
says
Yes.
no. And so now, why is Hillard Hines given that responsibility? I understand, if for the sake of argument, as you've said, they discovered this in the course of their work, there still should have been a separate entity that conducts this, not Hillard Hines, because now they're gonna be directly involved in it. It should be separate and distinct.
Absolutely.
I think that they're not conducting it. They're designing it.
Okay, you still have,
You could get a separate entity, I mean, they could have gone out for bids for it.
Yeah, that's what I asked at the
Okay, so
table.
here's
That's
where we are
exactly
then.
what
But
I asked.
it would mean we would not be anywhere near, you know, that bidding process takes a couple months. We would not be anywhere near the target. And we hired this group because they are expert in this field. I mean,
Okay, so all that we have experienced up to this point, yeah, we have some dates, they've all been pushed back. You know, even the bid itself was pushed back.
Right.
So our goal is to do what we as the commission did, do a thorough. If it takes the rest of the year, do it and get it right. Because ultimately, if we mean what we say, then we'll make it happen. Otherwise, we're just sitting up here making excuses. And that's a colossal waste of time, energy, and money. That's terrible. So my point is this, okay, we're here now. This needs to be done. Get it done. But let it stand on its own so that if it's ever challenged, it will stand, it would, you know, it'll be, it's legally defensible. Lawyers.
when you say what do you mean
It
by
means
it?
The
Yeah.
ultimate,
The report?
well, the report and this training program that
Okay.
that
Okay,
they've now determined needs to be done.
okay,
Because anyone who challenges that, we have a reputation as a commission
Right.
that is stellar. I don't want anything to compromise that
Absolutely.
because somebody wanted to get it done and get it over and done with. I want whatever we do to be legally defensible, but also so correct that as we say, we become the model by which others may want to establish the same thing. And I don't see that with Hillard Hines' involvement. If in fact it is, then state that. Put it out there. This is what we found. This is what we're going to do. Here's who's going to do it. This is when we anticipate it'll be done.
okay. I think that's what's gonna happen.
We don't know that though.
We don't know that.
And every time we come to these meetings, it's always after the fact. We learn stuff that we
Yeah.
probably should have known
We should have
beforehand.
known this before.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's no
which
doubt
is
about
why
it.
my question at the last meeting was, will we see this infamous
Yeah.
report
Yeah, sure.
before it becomes a done deal?
And we don't know yet.
No, we should, like I said.
Although I think we have to, yeah. My guess is we're gonna have limited input. It is their report.
Yeah, it is
I
their
underst-
report.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't know why everybody's, so been out of shape about, I just want to look at the report. I didn't say I wanted to tear it apart.
Okay. But we will.
At this point, we don't even know what it is.
No, I know. But again, neutrality is considered important.
Yeah.
And we have a voice after the report. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, it
However-
has to stand up to the critique of the community,
Right,
right? Because the
right.
community came to city council and they would just storm the city council, I mean, meeting after meeting. And that's what, it was a unanimous decision when it came out of the city council. Yes, we are going to hire an independent auditor, go. You guys did the report and brought it back
Sure,
to.
sure.
I mean,
So what steps can we take to make sure that we have done all we can to have their effort, Hillard Hines' effort, pay off for the city? What can we do?
Well, it goes back to, in my opinion, the request for proposal. And everything that's delineated in there, we need to ensure that they have met that criteria.
Absolutely,
Okay?
absolutely.
I don't know how to ensure, because
Well-
that she won't tell us who they've interviewed.
No, we don't need to know who she interviewed, okay? There's a difference between transparency and privacy. I understand. You don't want to say Sumi Kailasapati was interviewed.
So
But
what
you
do
do
you-
want to know, we went to the Islamic Center and
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
interviewed 15 youth.
15,
who were
so you want to
harassed.
know 15 youth from the Islamic
No, I'm just
Center.
kidding you.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I-
that
I
kind
know
of
what
It's
you're
all
saying.
made up institutions.
I was,
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
Okay.
I don't want to know,
Did they go to Jim Toy Center?
I don't
outcome.
want to know
Yeah.
the names. I don't want to know the names.
I don't want.
I've taken steps to make sure I don't know the names. But I also know people have told me that they have they've contacted Hillard and Hines 3 times and not been interviewed, and they were at the meeting. Now, have they been interviewed in the interim? I don't know, but I know that that's what I heard last Friday.
Really?
So it's
So if
like,
I get those
I don't know
names
what
and
to do
call
with
those
that.
people, because I can deal with those.
I don't know what
We
to do
need
with
to,
that.
we need to. If
can-
somebody
I
feels they
told you
needed
who.
to talk to
You
and
told
they
me
were
more,
not
and I can
listened
do,
to,
I can call that person.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue, because somebody who wants to talk to them badly obviously has something to tell them. If they were neutral about the issue, fine, you don't want to call me, fine, but if somebody wants to talk to them and they haven't spoken,
We need-
I think that's a red flag for me.
And the group that's been inundating me, they still say that they don't know people who should have been interviewed, and they were at the meeting.
Well, good.
That's where
They
they
were at
first.
the meeting?
That's why they first came to me, was because of the second meeting. You remember all those people that walked out?
Yeah,
Well, there we are.
okay. Well, so they came to the meeting.
They came to the meeting.
Let's get them in a group.
And I told you, I'll call them tonight,
Thank you.
so.
We need
Yeah.
groups.
We need to make this right.
Yes.
I mean, I know there are holes in the system, but it's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money
That's right.
that we are
We want this
spending on
money
this.
to
and-
pay off.
And we want it to be right.
Yeah.
We don't want it to fail, so we have to make that last push.
Okay. So anybody who's had trouble, and anybody in the television audience who's had trouble,
Yes,
call us
please
or
call us.
send an email to the Human Rights Commission and let us know, please.
Do you want to say the email address?
The email address is, somebody have it on their business card? Oh, here it is, thank you. It is hrc@a2gov.org. Let us know, and please give us a way to contact you to make sure that we can make it right.
You want to give them the number?
You can also call us at the telephone number, 734-794-6141. Is there anything else we can do, other than these groups, which we should take very seriously and try to form a number of them? As soon as you've got a group that says they're willing to do it, let's call me and let me know, and we'll try to get a date when they're gonna all be
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
How many people want
I'm gonna ask them
So
today.
here's a thought, and I don't know if we're too far along in phase one to do this. But, it's, what I'm hearing in this discussion is, and this has been an ongoing theme the last few meetings that we've had, is some frustration about not getting all of the information that we would like from Hillard Hines as they're doing this. Now, we're not the people who hired them, technically, right, the city did. But I wonder if, trying to build some more structure into our communications with them, does it make sense, for example, to identify one of us as the, unofficial HRC liaison
Oh,
to
good point.
to Hillard Hines, and see if Deborah's willing to have a weekly conversation with us for 30 minutes, just to update us on what's happening. I have no idea how she'll respond to it, but I mean, that's the thing. This is what I'm struggling with is, as Leslie was already saying, this is a highly professional organization. They beat out 5 other organizations. My personal contacts with Deborah, and I can only speak about my own personal contacts as well as what I've observed at the community meetings and her presentations here, is that they're professional. Are they doing every single thing that we want in the way that we would? Probably not. But my instinct is, on a level. They should be given some leeway to do their jobs. But if we want more information, and the only thing that's going to allay our concerns about this is to really try to build in some more structured communication with us, and maybe Deborah would be amenable to that. Just a weekly, and it doesn't even have to be 30 minutes, just 15 minutes where we can say, who have you talked to? What are you working on that we can be helpful with? Are there groups that we can help you pull together? That kind of thing. And I found her in the one lengthy conversation I had with her as a follow-up to the commission meeting 2 months ago. She was very responsive. I don't know that she followed through with every single suggestion we made.
Problem.
But again, I didn't say. And can you tell me when you've talked to each of them? I didn't make that request. But maybe just sort of regular structured communication. Again, I don't know if it's too late. I don't know how amenable she would be to that. But it's just a thought.
Okay.
So kind of you're establishing a feedback loop,
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
that's right.
You tell her, she tells you, you tell her.
Yeah, right,
So
just-
that it's not like 2 universes. We don't know what's going on. It's all kind of murky.
Okay.
Okay.
I can draft a letter and you can look at it, asking for these things. And
Do you want me to just call Deborah and see if she's willing to, have a weekly conversation with one of us? And it could be me, it could be anybody else who feels like they want to do it.
but you've got to be clear about what we need in terms of specificity.
Okay. So having something for me to go to her with would be important. What is it that we want?
So what I'm getting out of this, it's not even mentioning names whom she should
Yeah.
be interviewing or how they should be interviewing
Yeah.
or what questions they should.
Right, we're not telling them how to do their job.
Exactly. We are not telling them how to do their
Okay.
jobs because they are independent auditors. We are basically making sure that these marginalized groups that we worry about, we want them to be protected, they have enough of them in their pool to have interviewed them and talked. That's all we are directing them. Isn't
Yeah.
that right? We are not interfering
That's our
in the
main issue. We
process.
want to just make sure that, that all parts of the community, particularly the marginalized
Absolutely.
parts,
Yes.
that there's representation
Absolutely.
in what they're doing.
So that's all we are doing. So we are not interfering. We agree they are
Okay.
professionals.
We're
They
not-
know how to conduct their study.
Right.
We are not interfering in any of that, but we want to make sure because they were going to first have just the initial listening session at the downtown library, and we know how the representation there was. So, I mean, that pushback kind of led to the second listening session.
Right.
So that's all we are trying to do here, right?
Right, if I recall correctly, when we interviewed them, they knew they had to work with community orgs to get to the community. So we were
Right.
just
Exactly.
offering to do the thing
Yeah,
that they
which when we
expected
perceive
Okay.
it
to need
wasn't
to do
done.
in the
Yeah.
first
So, and
place.
also, when they say they've been to Arrowwood, we need to know, are you just talking to the leader?
Manager. Yeah.
So
Or
are you
can we help
contacting her about
coordinate
these
you
other
with
things
the
about the
people
group that
with-
Dwight is talking
let us
about
help
and the
you.
group that,
As soon as I get some groups, yes, I will contact her and come up with a date.
okay. Any reason not to have this conversation with her at the same time? I mean, again,
I certainly could,
do you feel comfortable doing that?
yeah.
It's okay, you can get a conference call going, right? Both of you with her.
Oh, I wouldn't mind being on it if you want
You
me
know
to.
what, that's a good idea, why don't we
Why
do
don't
that?
you do that?
Okay, all
Why
right,
don't
that'll
we
be
do
fun.
that? Then we can make sure that we,
Hit all the points, right?
right,
Okay.
right. Okay. I think that is our agenda.
Well, we have the.
No, there was the ban the box.
Well,
Should
we dealt with that earlier,
did,
so that
we
we,
did.
I think we've done everything we can do. Ban the box will come up again next time, but,
Yeah.
you know, we'll keep, and I think that given what you told me about the library application, I think we.
Well, the
started
question
with
as
some-
it's stated is a violation of the Elliott Larson Act, not even our ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah.
then, yes, and let's talk about
Just
how to
even
deal with that.
asking it is a violation.
Good. That, that could solve a problem real
Mm-hmm.
easily. Okay,
I move to adjourn.
thank you.
So much
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much, folks. This was a hard meeting, but a good meeting. I think it's very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.